Here we go. Next chapter. Chapter 10. An Alabaster Aphrodite. I'm amazed that you don't emerge dirtier from the coal bin, Nanny said. I expected I'd have to bathe you and launder your clothes after prospective buyers were here, but each time you reappear quite clean. They were seated at the supper table, eating succulent pot roast. Nearby on the counter was a still warm pie they would have for dessert. Nanny, it had turned out, was an outstanding cook. Even her morning oatmeal, now that she added raisins and brown sugar, was delicious. 4 prospective buyers had been through the house by now, and no one had shown an interest in buying it. Each one left looking puzzled, murmuring comments about the odd plants and rugs and lamps and furniture, and expressing concern over toxic air, bad wiring, and a broken furnace. Oh, and rotten floorboards. We're very careful, Tim explained. We have found ways to stay out of sight and remain clean. I'm a lamp, Jane said. You are indeed, dear, said Nanny, leaning over to wipe a bit of gravy from Jane's chin. A real little lamb. I'm a cactus, Barnaby A. said. Nanny had gone to the counter to get the pie. She turned and said fondly, Practice? I didn't know you played an instrument, dear. Where do you practice? You're very quiet. I'm a coat tree, Barnaby B. said with a frown. Nanny sliced the pie neatly into triangular-shaped pieces. She slid each one onto a small plate. Poetry, she said with a smile. You are poetry? Well, I shouldn't say that exactly, but it's lovely a lovely thought, isn't it? She took the children's empty dinner plates away and began to pass the pie around. Where do you go, Nanny, when prospective buyers come by? Yeah, you reappear quite clean as well. Nanny blushed. Oh, I don't want to say, really. Tell, Tim commanded, or we won't eat your pie. Do you camouflage yourself? I guess you could say that, Nanny replied. The pie is raspberry, by the way. Are you a rug or a coat tree? Barnaby B. asked. A lamp? Or maybe a cactus? Nanny took a bite of raspberry pie and chewed with a satisfied look. Then she announced in a prim, educational voice, I am a statue. I do this. After setting her fork down on the plate, she got up from her chair, stood beside the stove, where she created a pose with both arms behind her head and one hip jutting forward. I stand in the upstairs hall next to the linen closet. But you don't look like a statue, Nanny, Tim pointed out. You're wearing a flowered apron, elastic stockings, and lace-up shoes. Now who's being a dodo? Nanny told him. Of course I don't wear these things. We have plenty of warning before prospective buyers come. As soon as we are notified, I rush to my room, remove my shoes, stockings, apron, and all the rest. I powder myself with talc to look like alabaster. What's alabaster? Asked Jane. White, Tim told her, like marble. And when I'm posing, Nanny went on, I believe I look very much like Aphrodite. Who's Aphrodite? Jane asked. Daughter of Zeus, known as Venus, but the most famous statue of Venus has no arms. I have arms. She held them up. So I think of myself as an Aphrodite when I'm posing as a statue. You mean you're naked, Nanny? Barnaby A. asked in amusement. Statues are never naked, Nanny said in a somewhat shocked voice. They are nude. Anyway, I drape myself and I use a sheet. So, Barnaby B. said, poking his fork into a piece of raspberry pie, you stand there nude, except for the sheet, all powdered, in a pose, and perfectly still? Well, sometimes I wink, the nanny admitted. The other day, that prospective buyer who ran downstairs screaming, was that because you winked? Possibly. Aphrodite, Nanny replied. They were all silent for a moment, picturing the scene. The prospective buyer had looked truly horrified and had run shrieking through the front door, and not been seen since. "What's that noise?" Barnaby B said suddenly. "I hear some banging." "It's at the front of the house," Jane said, listening. "Someone is hammering." After a moment, the noise ceased. They all went to look. More words had been added to the sign that was tacked to the window box. "Reduced? Cheaper? This house is never going to be sold," Tim murmured. "I can't imagine why not," said Nanny, smiling in an Aphrodite-like way.